Good afternoon, Namibia and the world, and welcome to our Monday session of the Government Information Center. Today's topic, hot one, I believe, and I do hope that you have moved closer to your radios and your television, and you stick with us till the end of this particular show as we are looking at GIPF pension benefit payouts. I believe this affects one, if not everybody, somehow, in some way, one time in your life, or multiple times if, unfortunate cases occur. But we do have two panelists here who will be assisting us in, answering some of the questions that we've had as a nation, and also just additional information that sometimes we find ourselves not knowing, and it can be to our detriment later on in life. I do have Mr. Elvis Nashilongo, who is the General Manager for Operations at the Government Institute's Pension Fund. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon, viewers.
I also have Mr. Edwin Shiramba, who is the General Manager for Marketing and Stakeholders Engagement at the GIPF as well. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us this afternoon. And as I said, it's one of those topics that does affect a lot of people in our nation. And I always say that this platform is one of educating, whether it's the panelists educating us as a nation, or sometimes even us as the audiences who are watching this show, to educate the panelists on matters that are, happening on the ground that they might not be aware of, that assists them to actually do their jobs much better. It's called accountability in another way. Kicking off, we would like to find out, Mr. Shiramba, and I think I'll pose this one to you. What are the benefits of a pension fund?
Thank you very much, and indeed, thank you for having us here on at the center. We constantly go out to speak to our members about the benefits we have for the GIPF members. But I think we appreciate this opportunity because the benefits that the GIPF provides to its members have such a trickling effect to so many Namibians. And to the extent that it really helps for the larger populace to understand what it is we are doing. So I think it goes to speak about the relationship between an employer and an employee. And as one of the conditions of service is to provide for that day when the employee is no more in service, when they have gone on retirement, and now that you are not getting your full salary anymore because you are no more working, but that at least there should be a provision so that you are not worse off than you were. And that's basically the purpose of a pension, to provide for that reduction in income the day that you are no more in full gainful employment. But at the same time, and as the law provides, many of the pensions will provide you with a one-third lump sum. And this money, when it comes, it also helps you to make sure that at least you take care of the most essential needs that will be recurring in your future, so that once the reduction in income happens the month going forward, that you are not destitute. So this is basically the purpose of a pension fund, is to take care of that day when you are no more gainfully employed, but at least that your life continues at a very good pace.
Okay. Mr. Nashilongo, I'm hoping you can assist us here, because we've also realized as we move in society, you've got people who approach our people as well as, employees of government institutions. I would like to then ask you at this point, what's the difference between a pension fund and an annuity fund?
A pension fund, it's an institution. I would probably say it's the same thing. Annuity fund basically happens when you want to supplement your existing pension, and you go to the market and purchase an annuity, so that when your pension fund pays out, you have got additional income because you have been making additional contribution. You have gone to the market and purchased a private annuity to try and supplement your pension income. So that is basically the same thing. Otherwise, annuity can be provided either by your existing pension fund or by a private vehicle insurance company in the market. What basically means is that you have purchased an annuity on top of what you are contributing towards your pension saving.
Okay, okay. Mr. Shiramba, in light of Mr. Nashilongo's response to that one, my next question then speaks to something similar. Is one then allowed to have, when you're under GIPF, are you allowed to have an additional pension fund with GIPF? And also, does GIPF specifically provide or make provision for annuity funds for their members?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a question we always get. Definitely by our rules, we do not allow our members, or the fund does not allow its members to make an additional contribution on, apart from the 7% that gets as an employee contribution, which is then supplemented by the 16% by your employer, 17% by your employer, and together this pool of funds become 23%, and that's what really buys your pension. But what we always say, there is nothing that prevents a member from taking out an additional annuity, retirement annuity, as was just explained now by Mr. Nashilongo, which some members actually do, in fact, and we encourage them to do so.
Okay, okay. Mr. Nashilongo, I see the two of you are flowing very nicely into each other, because now my next question speaks to what Mr. Shiramba slightly alluded to now, and that's the calculations that he started with, because I would like you then to kindly explain to us the process and the calculation for pension payouts with regards to employees, you know, and this is before retirement. No, let's be specific here. This is with regards to employees who are on retirement and those who have resigned from service. And what is the waiting period before the pension money is paid out to them?
Thank you very much for that question. I think it's a very important question. But before I attempt answering it, perhaps I need to just provide a clarity of the question. There are two benefits that are involved in that question. There is an instance when a member has withdrawn from the employer, meaning they have gone on resignation. That is called a resignation benefit. And it's calculated differently, and it has different elements. And part of your question also alludes to a retirement benefit, which I think is provided for in terms of Rule 3 of the pension fund rules. In terms of retirement, when a member retires, there is a formula which is predetermined. And members have access to this formula because each member is entitled to the rules of the fund. Basically, when you go on retirement, there is a formula which denoted as follows: 2.4 actuarial factor times years of service times final salary. And then that makes out what ought to be paid out in a lump sum. A lump sum comes in 1/3 of your total pension, and 2/3 of your pension will be paid in annuity, and that is for life. And if that income falls below the tax threshold, it's non-taxable. If it falls outside the threshold, it is taxable, and that is retirement benefit. In terms of resignation benefit, it's a much more straightforward benefit, which is calculated by means of a formula as well, which is final salary times years of service times the actuarial factor, which we also refer to as age factor, because your age also have got an impact on how much will be the benefit of a resignation. And when such a benefit is calculated, there is a number of options that a member can take. You can opt to take a cash benefit. And I do not advise members to go this route because that attracts a heavy penalty in terms of tax and all sorts of administrative penalties. It's not a good option to members. And there is a transfer option. That option is taken up when a member would like to preserve the pension benefit or the pension income until such time that they go on retirement. That attracts incentives from the law. Those that are preserving benefits, there is no tax liabilities on such a benefit, and such benefit will then be preserved until retirement age, and there is a benefit in doing that, so that at the end of the day, when you have retired from wherever you have been transferred to, you have got a sufficient pension or sufficient pension income to take care of your retirement. So it's very, very important that the distinction is made between these two benefits, to go through their rule book or the rules of the fund for the benefit of getting information that will at a later stage assist them to obtain sufficient benefits.
Okay. Mr. Shiramba, you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one small thing, which was almost a common thread in the presentation just done by Mr. Nashilongo. And that is for both of the benefits, it's the whole issue of years of service. This is very, very important because our members need to understand that the years of service, the day you first commence your employment with your employer, it becomes very important. And how do you know this? You know this by looking at your benefit statement. And we always tell our members that it's really incumbent upon you, the duty is on you to make sure that you know that you are a fully admitted member to the GIPF fund. And that you can do by either going to any of our offices, going to your HR office and talking to your HR officer, so that you make sure that you know that. And once you get your benefit statement, any error could happen. You need to make sure that if you know you started on this date, because that's one thing we mostly all remember, the day I started my job, my first job. And you cannot have, you have started in 2015, but then on the statement it says 2022. You just didn't start yesterday. And this becomes very important when you now are resigning or when this benefit becomes due, because the actuarial factor and the calculation and that is there is based on these years of service. So, and that's one thing we really want to make sure that our members know.
Okay. That is actually very true. Yes, Mr. Nashilongo.
If I may also make one of the very critical contribution to this item. There are actually brokers out there in the market who approach our members to say, instead of taking up a retirement benefit, resign now so that you get access to your full benefit. Such approach is erroneous. There is no way a resignation benefit will be equated to a retirement benefit. And we have got experiences of members that they have actually gone, they have taken a very wrong option, and they have approached the fund to say, are we able to reverse this decision? And in most cases, it's too late to reverse such a decision. Members ought to be very aware of the fact that the market out there is up to grab the commission that they get paid out of enabling people to cash out of the fund instead of retiring within the fund and be able to benefit until they separate from this world.
Very true, very true. Mr. Shiramba, we've so far gently touched some of these calculations, with some being with specifications on retirement and resignations and so on. But we would like to find out from you at this point, according to salary grading, what percentage do employees contribute towards their pension fund? Can we maybe just go into that a bit more detailed?
In terms of the rules of the fund, an employee contributes 7%.
Okay.
And that 7% is then matched by a 16% by the employer. And this together becomes 23%.
Okay.
And that is, in essence, what really buys your pension.
Okay. Okay.
And it is these funds that are paid over to the GIPF on a monthly basis. And then again, it rotates. And then because every month we also pay out the benefits to those who have either retired or to those who were spouses of a deceased member. Because when you look at it, the GIPF is the only fund of its sort in Namibia right now, which also then provides for an annuity for either a spouse or a child of a deceased member. And this is what we do with the money that is contributed on a monthly basis.
Okay, okay. As we say every time that we're on this platform, it's a conversation that we have, and very much so one that we use this platform for, to educate each other. At this point, I would like to remind our viewers that you are allowed to partake in this conversation. You can drop your questions or comments on our social media platforms through which we are live streaming this particular show. On Facebook, you can find us at the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Republic of Namibia. That is on Facebook, Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Republic of Namibia. We are also live streaming through our YouTube platform, and our handle there is MICT Namibia, MICT Namibia. A little later on in the show, we will be opening our lines to you. But right now, we'd like to get back to our panelists while we wait for your comments and questions on our social media platforms. And at this point, I think I'll divert this question to Mr. Shiramba. What are the different benefits between a person who resigns with a month's notice and that person who resigns with immediate effect, or let's say wants to resign within 24 hours? What then are those different types of benefits that they then receive?
Okay, I think what we also need to clarify is from our side as an administrator of the pension fund, we will treat every claim with the speed and urgency it needs. So from the side of the employer, where the process commences, and I think every responsible person, and within the labor law, you are at least required to provide your employer with a reasonable notice. And I think in terms of our labor law, that becomes 30 days. But then it also sometimes differ from the position of, what's the word I'm trying to use here now, of responsibility. That if you are a manager or if you are somebody who oversees other people, you cannot just step and pack and go. The whole process needs to be provided with that. So basically, at resignation, when you resign, you can choose what it is you want to do with your with the benefits you have had under your pension. And as Mr. Nashilongo alluded to, you either take your whole cash, which becomes fully taxable, or you may transfer your benefit to an annuity or a preservation fund of your choice, but just please make sure that such is registered with our regulator, with NAMFISA, so that you don't end up transferring your money to a fly-by-night. Or you can also choose to preserve or defer, your pension and leave it with the GIPF. But the caveat to that one is at least you must have worked for 10 years or more with your current employer in order for you to be able to benefit from leaving the money with the fund. And once this money is deferred or it's left with the fund, it matures with everything else, and you can access it at the time that you decide to go on retirement, whether it's normal retirement, which is 60 years, or whether it's early retirement, which is from the age of 55. So, and basically those are the two different benefits.
If I might add a quick one.
Yes, yes.
We have a formula, and the formula that GIPF is using to calculate benefit has got one particular element which ties into the period of withdrawals that you have referred to, and that is final salary. We will only be able to calculate a benefit when a final salary have been paid. So 24 hours will not be applicable to the payment of benefit. We will have to wait until your final salary has been received. In other words, the personnel office will not be able to fill in a claim if the final salary have not been received. I just wanted to emphasize that.
Okay, okay. Fair enough. But I'd actually like to then tickle into your experiences over the years. What have you come across as some of the reasons that can be discussed, of course, of somebody having to retire, or, I mean, not retire, resign with immediate effect? Because I'm thinking about what Mr. Shiramba said right now. If the labor law tells you that at least give your employer 30 days, yet provision has been made for an immediate resignation, how do we then balance that? What are some of the reasons that a person would just up and leave?
Yeah, if I may, I think we need to separate matters. A resignation or a withdrawal of service, it's a matter that pertains to conditions of service. While pension payment, it pertains to the management of the pension fund. Two separate issues, but of course, employees would resign for a number of reasons. Some of them, they are forced maybe to resign by various circumstances. Some have to take up study abroad. Some will have, for some personal circumstances, would like to access their funds, and therefore they will resign so that they get hold of the cash benefit, and so many reasons. And the most important information we want to give is perhaps a procedure that need to be followed in order to claim your benefits.
Okay. No, because I was just wondering. Yes, Mr. Shiramba. And
maybe just to add to that, to put it in the context of what we are talking about in pension and pension benefits. The moment you leave employment, and this is also what happens quite a lot, people will leave so that they can access the funds to come back. But then this becomes an interrupted service. And at the time that you now want to retire from the fund, you can also not do so having forgotten that the fact that you did go and you came back. So the period that you are back, for the most part, does not buy you enough time, enough years in service for you to be able to meaningfully obtain a good pensionable salary at the end of the day. And this is what we constantly also advise our members to say, a resignation to access the funds from your pension should not even be a consideration. And we have these frank discussions with our members about this, because at the end of the day, when you look at two people, even in your own neighborhood, the one who have worked and uninterruptedly is getting a pension, and the one who has gone back and in and out of teaching or nursing practice, you can quite see the difference when they are now 60 and getting a salary from pension. You can see in their livelihoods.
That's a realistic comparison if we do actually look into our societies. As I said, please be reminded that this is a conversation Please do give us your comments on our social media platforms. As we said on Facebook, we're at Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Republic of Namibia. We're also live streaming through our YouTube platform, and our handle there is MICT Namibia. While we wait for you, we continue here in the studio, and I would like to find out what are the different benefits that are claimed from the fund for an employee, who was still in service and one who has retired upon their death.
Let me classify that and provide two very important concepts in the way we distribute such benefits. There is what we call death in service. That is a benefit that is paid upon death of a member who is still in service. And there is also a benefit we refer to as death after retirement. They are both provided in terms of Rule 4.1 of the GIPF rules. A member that dies during or in service is entitled to what we call a death benefit, basically 2 times annual salary, and that portion is tax-free. And then you, depending on the circumstances of such a member, there is a host of other benefits like children pension, spouse pension, and so on. And that is when, basically when a person dies within service of the employer, is entitled to that benefit. There is also a benefit paid in terms of Rule 4.12 of the GIPF rules, and that is death after retirement, meaning that is a death of a pensioner, in other words. What GIPF does is that, and in terms of the rules, if such a particular pensioner have a surviving spouse, the surviving spouse or the annuity payment or the monthly income will be transferred to the spouse, and such surviving spouse will be receiving an income from GIPF until she or he also passes on. And there are also an investigation that is required to be conducted in terms of law to establish if there are other beneficiaries, so that in case there is a lump sum that needs to be distributed, those beneficiaries who will now be out of our investigation will be located, will also be entitled to a once-off benefit.
Okay, but staying with that, beneficiaries, is there an age cap on those specific beneficiaries? And are they beneficiaries that have been named or that were recorded by the main member specifically, or are we looking at also those that had not been recorded?
Yes, it's a very important question. There are beneficiaries who, in terms of the Section 37C of the Pension Fund Act, are entitled to benefit from a pension, whether you have nominated them or not. There are also those that are entitled to receive or could be considered to receive from the lump sum payout, and that are considered because the principal member has nominated them. Maybe later on, Mr. Shiramba will talk about the importance of a nomination, a nomination form that members must fill in, so that the fund is fully informed of who are the beneficiaries out there and who are the possible nominees that could potentially benefit from the pension. And that is very, 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 very important. So the fund is required to carry out investigation to find out whether there are remaining beneficiaries and nominees, and only then, when reasonable steps have been taken to ensure that all of those who are entitled to draw a benefit from such a particular payout are allocated, then after that, the payment then will be made.
Okay, Mr. Shiramba, you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that because the beneficiary nomination form becomes a very important document. Because for our trustees who have to sit and distribute this benefit, it serves as a guiding document. Yeah. And Mr. Nashilongo talked about spouses and also children. Now, in terms of this form, it clearly outlines under what section are you supposed to put which beneficiary. Now, we have two types of spouses. You have what you will say your spouse in terms of civil law, and then the fund also does recognize those marital unions which are customary. But this also becomes a little bit tricky because the practice now have seen, and which we are really discouraging, is for us to get the proof of marriage after the one person is deceased, which we really try to discourage from happening. And also when it comes to children, definitely the member is able to nominate any of the children or dependents that they have. But then also with our male counterparts, sometimes we realize, sometimes we keep some of the children away for reasons only known to themselves. But once you are deceased, the mothers or the children also do come forward. And that's why the fund is required by its rules to take all the reasonable steps to make sure that everybody who needs to benefit from this does so benefit. And that's why we have investigators, that's why we have social workers who go out in the community to really make sure that those whom we have are also the legitimate ones. Yeah. Because there could be room for abuse if this is not done.
Okay. I need to stick with this one. As we're saying, we're informing our nation here. Again, I ask, is there an age cap to beneficiaries, whether they were nominated or not, with regards to especially children? And I think the other question that I had here, and it comes from what Mr. Nashilongo earlier on spoke about with regards to the spouse being the one who receives this annuity payout up until the time of their passing. Now, my question to that is, what if the spouse remarries? Do they still benefit? No, because I'm just thinking here, not everybody stays a widow or widower. At some point, some people do decide to remarry. What happens then in that case?
Yes, let me first start with the first portion of your question, whether there is an age limit. There isn't an age limit in terms of benefiting from pension, but there are circumstances that that trustees take into consideration when distributing such a benefit. They will then look at the social status or condition of nominees and beneficiaries. You would find that discretion sometimes is used by trustees, and they are empowered in terms of their duties to exercise that, to exclude a nominee who in their, after considering all elements, could use their discretion to say that if such a member have got so much left, was earning so much less, and there are younger children, who still have to go through the misery of life. An adult who is employed and was nominated could be omitted.
Okay.
So each case is actually dealt with according to its own merit.
Okay.
Coming back to the second part of your question, whether there is a cap to benefit as a spouse, the rules of the fund do not have any provision that prevents a spouse who is already benefiting to benefit again if in case she or he remarries and the loved one passes on. I always jokingly put it when conducting member education to say that when you enter into a new relationship, you come with both assets and liabilities.
You know.
And it is assumed that you are left with such assets and liabilities, and you are entitled then to take care of that estate.
Okay.
So there is no limit, and we have cases where members are drawing multiple income from the fund as a result of that rule.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, maybe just to add to something that Mr. Nashilongo said, definitely when it comes to children, in order to benefit from that lump sum, there is no age cap put on who may benefit or not. But basically, when the determination is made as to what percentage in variety, then some of the consideration are given. But then we also have an instance where the deceased member now has children, especially who are below the age of 25. And to that, we require for this child to be able to continue to get a monthly annuity. We also require them to be in school.
Okay.
And there has to be a proof of such.
Yeah.
Because when you really look at it, when you look at the pension benefits that the fund provides, was to make sure that nobody is left destitute.
Yeah.
And in our calculation and in our analysis, that age, when you are still able to be either in school, primary, secondary, high school, or college, it is that age that allows you to have been at least able to get support, so that you are able to be on your own feet and not necessarily require on the pension of maybe one of the deceased members who are surviving if the other one is no more. And that's why that provision is made. But we constantly get the question as to, but why put an age limit to it? It is a pension fund, a pension benefit meant for the person who is on pension.
Exactly.
And not to really support the whole family in perpetuity until you are 50 or 60, if you were not really a member of the fund.
It's true. I'm sorry, one last follow-up question to this one. I think it's one of those where when you start answering, a few other things come to mind that are really happening in reality. Now the question is, are grandchildren, for example, you've got somebody who was married, but they never had children. Let's say, for example, it's a man. He was married to a woman. He never had children with this particular individual, but the lady had a child from a previous marriage or whatnot, and that child has children. Are they then allowed to benefit from the man's pension once the man passes on? And under what circumstances, if yes? So basically, grandchildren that are not necessarily biological grandchildren.
Yeah, in terms of our rules, there is a definition of a qualifying child, which is quite wide. It goes beyond biological children. But just to narrow that question, or to be specific, what trustees look at is the level of dependency. If it can be proven that such a particular child was being taken care of by the deceased member, then such a child will be able to benefit, irrespective of family relations.
Okay.
So the level of dependency, and very important if such a child was also nominated.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
We move on. It's an interesting conversation this afternoon, and I am really challenging our panelists this afternoon. But I believe these are questions that we do need to ask, and we need to make sure that we get as much detail as possible in the hope that we can help somebody who is actually dealing with some of these issues so that they know exactly what to do. In the absence of a spouse or children, to whom do these benefits and payouts go to?
Yeah.
Simple question.
Yeah.
Let me first start, and then Mr. Nashiba can come in.
Yes.
Now, in the absence of a spouse or a child, definitely it will also depend whether the member had a beneficiary, people whom he or she nominated to benefit from this from this pension of his or him or hers. Now, in the absence of that, there is no child, there is no spouse, there is no beneficiary nomination, and the fund has taken all the reasonable steps in law to make sure that we have made that sure that there are none of those that we are talking about. Then the fund is mandated to pay this monies over to the Master of Higher Court, and it goes towards the estate of this particular deceased member. And that's why we always keep telling our members that your pension is not treated by the same law that does with estates or with wills and testaments.
Yeah.
That's a different thing. And that's why we say, that's why we need your beneficiary nomination form for us to be a guiding document as to how your pension should be. But then in the absence of any of that, and the money is there, the money, please, is not kept by the GIPF. It's paid over to the Master of Higher Court, and it becomes part of your estate.
Yes, okay. Mr. Nashilanga, would you like to add to that?
I think that was eloquent.
Okay, okay. Now we'd also like to find out, when the main member passes on, is there a time frame during which a spouse must submit a claim? And what are the necessary documents that are needed for that claim to be approved?
Yes, if I may take that one. There isn't a time frame, but we encourage that family members submit their claims as soon as possible. In fact, we encourage that such a process commence right at the time when a funeral claim is submitted in. We always encourage family members to do that for the following reason. Distribution of a death benefit is such a complex matter. It requires a number of complex investigation. We are required by law to make sure that we have searched all the possible beneficiaries. We have searched all the possible nominees. And there is also a number of documents and facts that takes time to be collated and collected. As a result, the earlier the better, so that proper and necessary investigations can be conducted for the benefit of the household to receive such income in time. Yes.
Okay, okay. We have a social media question, or a question from our social media platforms, pardon me. And as we said, you know, everybody is welcome to this conversation. And this one is coming from Nene Mukwanyoka. And the question states, it is indicated that the tax is way huge for those opting for cash payouts. is the percentage of the tax determined in order to discourage members from resigning, or why is it this high? I don't know. Who would like to take that one on?
I'll take it.
Okay.
It's a very interesting question, and I can guarantee you that we have encountered this question on a number of occasions. The tax is dealt with in terms of the income tax law. It's an area that we're not well vested in. Perhaps the Department of Revenue or Tax Authority can take care of that. But what we can say is that one could only guess to say that since all income are taxed in Namibia, that is law, the fact that cash withdrawal is heavily taxed is the attempt by government to ensure that people are discouraged from cashing out.
Okay.
One can only draw that conclusion, but I think the competent authority to look at that question is the tax authorities. All we can say is that it is not logical for members to opt for cash out while there is enormous benefits that comes with a retirement benefit. We have even seen members that opt to cash out at a period between 55 and 60. And at that period, employees or members are already entitled to a retirement benefit. Okay. Why resigning at the age of 56 if you can draw a retirement benefit where you will be entitled to a lifelong benefit? Yeah.
Or just simply retiring early.
Yes. Okay. I'm liking this. We're learning new things here. I think a lot of these little intricate details we never really hear about, and I believe it's sometimes good to really just have a platform like this where we can go into those nitty-gritties. We continue here. Time is not always on our side, as I say, on this show, but we'll try and bring out all the necessary information in the last few minutes that we have here. And I'd like then to find out, are there, and I think this one I'd like Mr. Shiramba to assist me with, what kind of debt or loans would prevent a pension from being paid out or being claimed, if any?
I think the simple answer is there could be no debt or loans that will prevent your pension benefit from being paid out.
Yeah.
But what we can also say, the law, and Mr. Nashilongo can be as specific as to what those are, they are what we call allowable deductions from the pension. Okay. And sometimes this is things like child support, and these are things that are directed by a court of law. Because we at the end of the day, we are talking about a promise and guarantee benefit. Yes. So we cannot, in the middle of it, be making all types of deductions that are not so much regulated. And that's why there are only allowable deductions that are made, but definitely there is no external debt or something that you have there that is not regulated by the rules that will prevent you from accessing this benefit at all.
Okay.
In fact, the pension is heavily protected. Section 37D of the Pension Fund Act is very, very deliberate on the preservation of a pension benefit. And that is why only in specific instances where some deductions are allowed, only when there is a court order or payment to medical aid, the maintenance costs, and house loans. Those are the only few deductions that are allowed. Otherwise, As Mr. Shiramba have stated, a pension is not part of your estate, and as a result, it's very, very much protected. Not even yourself, as the owner of a pension fund, can say so much of my pension must be given to Desiree. Only when it is allowed in terms of our rules and in terms of the Pension Fund Act.
Okay, okay. Yeah. I'm pushing the bar here. I said it a little earlier on, the time is never on our side. And now you're tickling a question here when you speak to the protection of a pension fund. Because GIPF has been featuring a lot in local news lately for not so good reasons. Now, I would like to know from the institution, how do you allay the concerns of your members that their money is safe in GIPF's care? And that directly ties into what you just said right now. But now how do we then reaffirm that?
A very interesting question, and I would like to put on my sobriety hat to sort of tackle that question. It's the question of, is there good governance framework in place? Is GIPF governed by good governance framework? The pension is highly protected. You would see that GIPF is a participant in the industry that is heavily regulated. We have got a Namibia supervisory, Namibia NAMFISA, Namibia Financial Institutions Supervisory Authority.
Yeah.
And that is the authority that is watching over our activities. We also have got a very robust governance structure that would ensure that the pension fund is managed in a manner that provides that assurance to the owners of the money. You might have seen also that recently we have launched our whistleblower policy. That is with the intention of strengthening our our strategy to protect the assets of the fund. Recently, we also launched what we call ESG policy, that is environmental governance, social and governance policy, to make sure that all our investee companies, they adhere to a set of standards on how the money must be, or the funds must be invested. But without belaboring on the matter, we are operating in an industry that is prone to cases of fraud. We are participating in the financial services sector, and we ought to be very vigilant. We have to have watertight policies to make sure that these assets are protected. And whenever there is an incident of fraud or misrepresentation, there must be robust action that must be taken in terms of our policies in order to effectively deal with that issues of misrepresentation.
Okay, okay. We only have time for a few more questions here, and I'm trying to squeeze them in as much as possible. There is one that speaks to employee service termination, loosely said dismissal, or when one becomes medically boarded. What benefits does such an individual then receive from their pension?
If I can take that one also, I wish to make a distinction between the two benefits that you've mentioned. If someone is dismissed, such case is treated as if such a particular person has resigned.
Okay.
and that is called resignation benefit or withdrawal benefit. If a person is medically boarded, such a person shall exit the fund either through ill health benefit or through a disability benefit, depending on how the doctors have classified such a case. Okay. There is a benefit called ill health benefit, which is basically a retirement on the basis of ill health. And there is a benefit that is referred to as disability benefit, and that is a benefit that entails that monthly income is provided to such a particular member until she or he reaches the exit point, either due to death or retirement or resignation.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. As I said, time is never on our side when we are trying to learn, when we are questioning, when we are probing, and furthermore. But we have websites to these institutions that we present on our platform here. So I would highly advise anybody who has a problem or just wants to further educate themselves to please visit the website for the Government Institutions Pension Fund, the GIPF. And at this point, I'd like to thank our panelists, Mr. Shiramba as well as Mr. Nashilongo, for availing themselves so that we can probe into these questions that the public has been asking. From myself, Desire Kahiha, along with my production crew here, bye-bye.